Hi everybody and welcome to the Property AI Report. This is your weekly digest of all things property and AI, brought to you by me, Mal McCallion, and my good friend and co-host, Matt Goddard. Matt, how are you today?
Awesome, thanks, Mal. How's your week been?
It's been really good. It's been very busy. But yes, very good busy. And what about you? You've been out and about,
Excellent. I
haven't you?
was
You've been around.
all over the place. It was my niece's 12th birthday on Wednesday,
That's the
so I've
big
been
one.
over in Twickenham. You've got
Partying.
more guidance on this than I have. So I guess teenage years next. We were over in Twickenham seeing them yesterday, which was lovely.
Very nice. Good stuff. So listen, we are going to crack into quite a lot today. So let's kick it all off with our property news. All right, first up for our property news this week, some of the blue blood estate agents have joined the self-employed / affiliate model. Stratton Parker, I think, announced in the last couple of weeks that they were going into it. And now one of the big ones, Knight Frank, is diving in as well. Kind of really sort of gives a sort of approval from on high of this particular model. Matt, what's your take?
I think it's great to see it continuing to extend and people being open to changing the business model. I think one of the things I've spoken to various people in the years since I left Foxtons, where there's been a bit of a, what would you call it, like a bleed previously of people moving on and moving out of town and onwards, is if actually we'd have kept the systems and processes and had some sort of structure in place that let people who wanted to maybe move home or move out of London have a similar approach to do so. And I think this is a good way for those like large corporates to sort of retain the talent, but not necessarily in the previous corporate structure. How about yourself?
Yeah, I think it's really fascinating. I think the last I saw from CI was that it still makes up a relatively small percentage, something like 3 or 4%, something like that. But obviously, the fact that everybody is that all of these people are self-employed means that they tend to be quite noisy, a lot noisier than your average sort of agent working in an office. So you tend to see them a lot more. Or maybe that's just my feed, but certainly I think it is becoming an increasingly interesting part. And there's, as it matures, it also kind of throws up different elements in each different kind of company or kind of like business. So you've got the sort of the Ian Prestons from Preston Baker and Richard James from Richard James and Swindon, who are kind of building out those internally under their brand, direct out from their estate agency, but really kind of retaining quite a bit of control. To the sort of more, I've been at Keller Williams's mega cap this week, which has been amazing. They've like 300 odd. It has been so mega, and they've got about 300 odd people there, who are all, just individuals, right across, from Scotland down to the south coast, and the variety and the way that they work is really interesting and different as well. I know that's also true of EXP, for example. So yeah, I do think I think it's going to be really fascinating to see how big this sector can actually get, because like you said, it does reflect how a lot of people want to work these days. If they can get a few instructions through per month and get the commissions off that and live off that, then that's good enough for some people. Others are absolutely focused on this becoming much more than a kind of lifestyle business and something that the more sort of empire building, where some of the EXP lot have got a lot of people working with them and for them, and have also got their the people they've introduced and are getting revenues from them as well. So it's just a really interesting space right now, and I think it's got a lot of mileage still to go. And yeah, fully appreciate just how all these entrepreneurs are kind of putting their money and their energy where their mouth is and kind of going after it. Yeah, I think it's going to be a really interesting kind of session over the next few months and years. Right, next up, we're going to look at new launch. We touched on it last week. It's called MarketRent. It's a new property technology business by one of friend of the show and somebody who's been in the industry and has created something significant before, and that is the founder of Fixflow, Rajiv Nayar, has now launched MarketRent. Now this is a platform to support rent reviews under the Renters' Rights Act. So it is timely, if nothing else, with the Renters' Rights Act coming in about 2 weeks' time. But yeah, Matt, I know you've had a good look at this. What's your take?
It's great timing, as you're saying. It's sort of similar with Fixflow, that Rajiv pulled a rabbit out hat there, because he started on with that icon-driven maintenance reporting at a time where smartphones were just kicking off. Yeah. And so to be able to have that ease of reporting your issues rather than trying to get hold of your property manager at whatever time of day, sort of solved a problem for both sides. And I think he's doing similar now, is sort of with Renters' Rights Act coming in, and we were talking about it last week, and that's why I sort of alluded to this, but we didn't know if it was allowed to go public yet. It's a bit like when I was sort of commenting about My Porter, and you're like, we're only in beta. Please do not assume too much. But obviously there was the big announcement this week, and he sort of stepped out, and I know sort of I think he had over 80 people subscribe on the first day to be involved in the sort of the pilot scheme. And the reason I think it's quite significant and very good timing on his and Duncan's part again is that with the Renters' Rights Act coming in on the 1st of May, renewals is going to be abolished, and going forwards, you can, as a landlord and an agent, serve a rent increase, but what you have to do is serve what's going to be a Section 13 notice, and they can be disputed by the tenants, and they can go to tenant and to tribunal rather. And what you have to be able to do is substantiate that what you are doing is a fair increase in line with market rents. So by collating all the data together and showing to tenants and landlords in advance, this is why we're doing the market rent, the approach that we're going for. Hopefully, A, you avoid going to tribunal, and then B, if you unfortunately do have to go, you're in a more solid state to dispute or win that claim. It's sort of thing that we've talked before, and in terms of corporate, and even yesterday I was talking to Megan 18, who's the president of Property Mart, about how London differentiates from the rest of the country. In London, corporate agents, you get renewals departments very much focused on getting the best rent increases for their clients. But a lot of time tenants will say, well, no, I'm not willing to take that. I'm going to serve notice and move on. And then they'd go out into the market and discover, actually, I'm on a really good deal, even with the rent increase that's being offered in the renewal. And come back. But by then, sometimes, the property be on the market, might even be relet. This sort of Section 13 notice approach to rent increases means that Rajiv's market rent product will be actually hopefully helping agents who are replacing that renewal, but also trying to get the best situation for both landlords and tenants who've got that substantive data points that they need to win that process.
Yeah, exactly that. I think if this removes arguments and friction and kind of, some conflict within the relationships between landlords and tenants, that can only be a hugely beneficial thing. To be able to, no tenant is going to welcome a rent increase, but if they can at least see that actually, it is in line with what's happening elsewhere in the market, then yeah, that can only be helpful to them, because that means that they're not just going to kind of leave, but also, or indeed go down a tribunal action that's going to take for ages and end up being pointless. But yeah, it also means that essentially everyone's got the same information and is able to kind of operate and act as a result of that. So yeah, good luck to them and to Rajiv and co. With MarketRent. Looks like a really, really good product out there. All right, next up, our old friends Purplebricks. Now, they have been in the news this week because they are bringing back virtual valuations. Some might argue that they didn't necessarily go away, because, that has been possible for a variety of different agencies over time, including Purplebricks, I believe. But yes, they are now stepping it up as a kind of formal process where actually they will get you to kind of describe your property, maybe show some of the property itself yourself from your screen, and they will be able to give you a virtual valuation on the back of that. I think this came through the Negotiator reporting on it this week, but they spotted it in the Harrogate, I'm going to say Harrogate Gazette. Yeah. The Advertiser, sorry.
How do you not know your Harrogate local papers?
Do you know what? I'm really, really out of practice on that. So yeah, I think it is. So it's interesting, isn't it? It's like, is this Back to the Future? Is this actually the future, but they were too early last time? What do you think?
I think at first I was really wondering if this is part of a big relaunch, because obviously you've spoken about before about Michael Bruce siphoning off a load of technology from Boomin before it went through. Allegedly. Yeah, got you. For those listening, Mal did something with his hand. I thought he was giving me the loser sign. Maybe a bit of both. But I wondered if it's part of that sort of relaunch, reboost, but then obviously picking up on the Harrogate or Harrogate, depending on your level of wealth.
Which one's right? Do we have a view?
And I'm from Grimsby, it's Harrogate. But I thought it was a relaunch showing that the back in business, as you say, if it's not gone away, it is just re-promoting something. And we see this with prop techs a lot, don't they? They come out and say, we've got this brand new amazing feature, but actually all the competitors already have it. And so they're sort of shouting about something that already exists. And it happens time and again. Whereas I don't think this is something new, but I was hoping to see some of this actual new stuff that's been allegedly taken from Booming. But it feels a little bit like non-news, and it's just because it's PB, right?
I think that's kind of it, isn't it? It's like, I think it is that they are pushing this out there, that they've obviously done some PR piece with this reporter from, as you say, the Harrogate Advertiser is interesting. I don't think that spontaneously Lizzie Gill, for that is the journalist's name, I wouldn't necessarily be finding it interesting enough to write about, but yeah, obviously there's been some kind of push on it. I think that, if you look forwards, is this going to become more commonplace? Is it going to be something that is a point of difference for Purplebricks? Is it going to be something that competitors who can actually go out to the property are going to leverage as competitive advantage? And I think probably many of those things are going to be true. And I think it's going to be just another sort of differentiator that's kind of going for good or bad, that is going to mean that the Purplebricks is reverting to essentially what the Bruce brothers created back in the day, which is very light on kind of human contact, and very big on using as much tech as it possibly can to get that process completed. All right, so that is our property news for this week. Let's dive into our AI and tech news. Now, we wanted to start perhaps on a little bit of a downer for a change on AI and tech news. Now, everybody knows out there that we are speaking for myself rather than for you, Matt, I'm an AI optimist. I think this is going to bring so much benefit to kind of humanity and to all of us, that there will be some disruption as every technological change delivers, from the railways to electricity, probably going back to fire and wheels. But yeah, this it's becoming more and more of an issue out there, to the point that Sam Altman, who is the CEO of OpenAI, somebody actually attacked his house with a Molotov cocktail and threw stuff at him. His family is inside with his little baby. So yeah, it's starting to break out into this real sort of, almost the old the Luddites, kind of going after the spinning jennies and the factories and things like that. So yeah, look, this isn't great. And I think, people really need to start thinking about, what actually is the overall kind of intent of this. There's a lot of protests around data centers as well being created. There's a lot of information misinformation about, how it uses electricity, how it uses water, these data centers. But then the flip side is, actual demand for this using AI is going through the roof as well, to the point that one of our other stories, one of the big labs has had to kind of constrain the amount that's being used. So yeah, Matt, what's your take on this?
I say it's obviously terrifying for Sam Altman and his family, and just to remind you that there's humans at the heart of everything that we do, I guess, for now, given the nature of what we talk about every week. But it wasn't just the Molotov cocktail, was it? And the guy had travelled from Texas, so it wasn't just I've done something over the weekend, I've got this thing, and I'm going to throw it at Sam Altman's house. He travelled a long way with a clear agenda, and he actually had an AI manifesto and a list of other AI execs on it. So it was a really planned out attack. And then I think the other terrifying part of it is that it then spawned on, and there's a drive-by shooting on his house like a couple of days later. So it's sort of bringing to the surface those tensions that we regularly see. And you sometimes think, oh, it's America and they're a bit wacky over there, but it is showing that people are genuinely worried about their jobs, their lives. Obviously, the kick onto this is sort of a housing affordability side of things. So, I just whilst we don't like to carry everything on here and stay quite positive, I think it is that balanced view that we need to see that it's not all pro Claude and ChatGPT and Gemini and such like. And I just got off a call this morning with Simon Well, who's discovered Perplexity Computer and is absolutely loving it. But there is some concern out there, and quite rightly so. The story you alluded to there is Maine has passed no more data centres because of the concerns about electricity availability, and if they're going to have to have brownouts like they have in South Africa due to lack of electricity. There are genuine concerns about where we're going with all this, over and above sort of the Terminator and Matrix worlds that are the sci-fi take on it.
Yeah, and exactly that. Yeah, and we never want to make light of it. We know very much that that there are real consequences out there. That AI is very, very good at very, very many things, and is becoming increasingly good at it. We touched on Mythos last week from Anthropic, and we'll bounce a little bit onto that again in a sec. These intelligences are becoming incredibly adept at doing things that historically only humans could do, and that is necessarily going to have an impact, as factories did. And again, as many of the other technologies we now take for granted. If you look at the internet versus print, things like that. There are far fewer print organizations than there were back in 1999. And some people will mourn them, people who worked in them particularly. But what the internet has enabled overall is an absolute Cambrian explosion of other roles. And because it took a little bit of time, then it was able to kind of be seen to be offset. And, I think that will happen again. The time frame is the difficult thing. Actually AI is moving so fast that actually do we have time to kind of look at the reskilling and how people are going to redeploy their purpose in life in time for when AI does make some significant jobs redundant. So look, we always keep an eye out on that. But I think that the kind of overriding thing is, as with everything, progress is going to happen. Consider the human creature has always retained its ability and its focus on improvement and on growth and on using tools to better itself, from stones to bronze to iron and so on. So look, it's again by no means making light of it. There are crazy people out there who will do crazy things regardless of the circumstances. But I do think that the overall benefit here is it is going to be initially lumpy. But I think those that are listening in here, those that are understanding what AI is able to do and how they can deploy it within their own roles and within their own lives, going to be very well set when it comes to deciding how they are going to work in the new world, for sure. Right. Next up, we wanted to continue to look at a little bit at OpenAI, right? Because they have actually released again another chunky update, and it's all about the code, Matt. So this one is lobbed very delicately over into.
Thanks very much. So this is an update to OpenAI's Codex. So it's still running on 5.3 in terms of the large language model behind it, but they've made various updates to what we should really be calling the harness. So it's taking direct aim at Claude code that we speak about on a regular basis here, which is the agentic harness that sits around the Claude Sonnet Opus model, depending on which one you choose to use and run. Codex has got quite a major update, actually. So it's added gaps, I guess, between what the Claude code had previously. So it's added computer use, which, I got quite excited about either last week or the week before, because it means that you can now be running some of those legacy systems that only open on the desktop and not inside a browser. It's also got in-app browsing, so you can actually have it go away and do research. So it feels to me like it's also moving more towards that. When we know there's the mega app coming, or super app, or whatever we call it, like they're going to be taking on co-work, because ultimately co-work is Claude code, but with a friendlier and less codey front end on it. It's also got ChatGPT image 1.5 in there for image generation, 90 plus new plugins from Atlassian's Jira through to Gmail and Notion, which obviously we use for our weekly notes. But also, it looks like it's been targeted squarely at the AI agents doing the real autonomous work, which we were talking off air, weren't we? The fact that that's where we'll get into, these swarms of agents we can just set off. I think actually, and we've not got it in the show notes, but by the sound thing, the updates to Claude Code is actually getting to, there's a big UI change for Claude Code, which allows you just to manage and orchestrate all the agents that are running rather than having to open up different sessions for each one. So it's an exciting time if you're a geek like me.
Yeah, indeed. And look, even for geeks like me who are not professional coders, this opens up a whole new world in terms of what the capabilities are. And I think that with the improvement to Codex, and then moving on to the next story, we now have, as of less than 24 hours ago, 18 hours ago, I think, I have Claude Opus 4.7.
You sent this through at 10:30 last night.
I was so excited. Oh my God. This is so sad. But it's here, and it is again another kind of leap up. You can look at the benchmarks and agentic coding. It's got up on the SweBench Pro benchmark from 53.4% with Opus 4.6 to 64.3. And this is significant, right? That is a huge jump. ChatGPT 5.4 says it's at 57.7. So, again, this is so powerful and making real differences. The commentary around it with that actually they believe that a lot of tasks that senior developers and managers, IT managers would still want to babysit AI for, now they're just letting go. because they're so confident now that it's able to complete the task, and certainly is able to check it itself and then go back and kind of do this recursive learning and building out what it needs to do. The interesting thing about this at the launch is they also, and we spoke last week about Mythos, and yeah, I also sent you that photo. So Mythos is, as we discussed last week, is also a beer from Greece. I haven't seen Mythos in the UK like forever. And then I was in my local Tesco's like on Tuesday night, and I sent you this picture because Mythos, the beer, is suddenly here, and I just wonder whether basically they're riffing off the back of it. They've seen an opportunity.
They listened to our podcast, and the distributors have gone, well, I need to get that into Cambridgeshire so that Mal actually buys these because it's now in his head. And how many
100%.
cases did you buy? Was it all 10?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That was just for Tuesday night.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
yeah, no, it's been So Mythos, and the reason for bringing up in terms of this benchmarking is they haven't released Mythos. Okay, so that they think it's too powerful, and
But
particularly
they've
what it can
released
do is
it to 40 people, haven't they, as part of Project Glasswing? And so that brings in itself an interesting one of being like, well, hold on, are we starting to get different levels of there's certain people can have the most powerful version, whereas us plebs are being held back?
Yeah, and yeah, is this how it's going to go in the future? And so the reason why they've held Mythos back, again, just to recap from last week, is that they worry that it's going to basically break every single encryption ever. So from the email address that you use to log into Google all the way up to Bitcoin. But yeah, it's finding vulnerabilities in ancient software that humans have tried to find for forever, and it's just it's mind blowing. So they've kept it behind closed doors. But what they've done is they've actually put Mythos versus Opus 4.7. So they released 4.7 last night, real kind of fanfare. But then alongside it, they've got the Mythos preview that actually 64.3% again on agentic coding for 4.7, massive jump. But then Mythos is 77.8. All right, so it's insane. And again, so this is like almost a 50% jump from Opus 4.6 up to Mythos. So yeah, huge stuff coming down the track. Again, just going to continue to blow people's minds in terms of what its capability is. So as we always say, go try play. Don't sit and wonder. Don't wait for the next thing to come out. Get stuck in now, because there is lots there that already, even if we stop right now, then this would change your business forever and enable you to do so many more things. So the quicker you're on it, the more you're going to know.
So we should temper that though, right, Mal? And I know it's in one of the next stories, and you've sort of alluded to already. It's all well and good launching the new Opus 4.7, but when Opus 4.6 was getting throttled, and it's clearly been dumbed down compared to what we're used to, like, is this, yes, they've launched a new version, but are we going to be throttled? Is it going to struggle to respond to our queries? Because people who listen to the show and people who ask us sort of when we're out and about, what should I be using, they maybe take our advice, give a try, and then if they're getting annoying results back because they are getting throttled, or that the level of reasoning and tokens used is lower, then actually you just think, well, that's crap, I've been given bad advice, and go away. So that's for those listening, it's very clear that Anthropic at the moment is struggling with basically resource constraints and server capacity. They're sort of dialing down how many tokens are being used to reason and answer questions compared to when these models first get launched. So maybe there'll be a bit of a spike over the next few days of everyone going to Opus 4.7 and them giving it the throttle it needs, but then dialing it back because those server farms that aren't getting built in Maine don't have that capacity.
Yeah, 100%. So yeah, like if anybody asks, and I'm up on stage in front of 300 agents later on today, and I will be talking about Claude Cowork, and yeah, it is the one right now that I think is the one to beat. So yeah, always kind of pointing people in the direction of what's best. But you're right. Our next story is that Anthropic's got a massive user backlash. So Anthropic can make Claude because of performance issues / as you say, throttling. So they're actually constraining the amount of compute that is dedicated to each individual because they're running out of power. They're running out of compute. So yeah, it's a real challenge. It is something that they are desperately looking to build out. We spoke, I think, a couple of weeks back. OpenAI got $122 billion, which is so huge in terms of the amount of cash that it's that is being invested in it to build out these data farms. But yeah, it's just not going fast enough. The more and more people actually get used to it, the more and more people are looking for it, the more challenging it's going to be, I think, for these guys to try and work out how to do it. On the plus side, as we know, hardware's getting better. So actually, the amount of compute that can be produced per GPU and per per training run and through the inference is much better and getting even quicker. And perhaps we have to thank a lot of the Chinese models for a lot of that, because what they do is that because they can't get access to all of these chips, they just make it really, really efficient. And on the Western world then that kind of copies that. So it's a really interesting kind of dynamic. But yeah, I think it's going to be yes, a topic that we will definitely return to. Because it's a problem. All right, our next story in our AI and tech news, we're going to dive into Microsoft and GitHub. So again, squarely in your wheelhouse, Matt. We've got some booming traffic in there, and again, some constraints in terms of its ability to serve those that want to use it.
So GitHub, for those listening and not aware, is the code where most developers have their code repositories. So sort of simplistic way of thinking of code repositories, like a folder on your desktop where all the files live that create the programs and applications that you interact with. GitHub's probably the major player in there, but companies do use other providers as well. And it's actually come under real strain since agentic coding and vibe coding came along because of the volume of commit. And just this week, it's hit 275 million code commits in a week, as it really ups that strain. And you sort of touched on this last week, Mal, with relation to GitHub, but actually 4 or 5 weeks ago, there was a story that we didn't discuss because it's probably a bit too geeky, but GitHub is actually having outage problems because of the volume of users and interactions that are going on, to the extent that OpenAI are actually starting to build out their own version of GitHub, so they're not beholden to Microsoft on this front. And just to see that volume of agentic coding, people vibe coding and creating files in GitHub has obviously set a record for them, but it's also having sort of knock-on effects. Another knock-on effect is that Apple have even started to restrict the apps they'll accept onto their version of the app market because of wanting to slow down sort of what's being created by vibe coding versus more traditional businesses.
Yeah, so to that point, I've got now a GitHub account, and and I've been actually. So that just tells you everything you need to know about how this is going, because I have never needed one or never had one, and now I've been using it all this week. So I am one of those that is stopping the more legit coders. So sorry guys, sorry man, from actually accessing it. So again, this is just another indication of just how big this is getting and how quickly things are moving. A story on our AI and tech news, Perplexity, interesting business. And we periodically go back and mention it. It was an AI search engine looking to take on Google, didn't quite work there. It pivoted very recently into more AI agents. And yet, seems like its revenue is up significantly, 50% on the back of that.
This is a really interesting one for me because there's a couple of factors that appear to have driven that increase in revenue. And the reason it's interesting is it's something I think we'll start to see across all SaaS, or at least SaaS starts to sort of consider, and with software as a service and just applications that we pay for and utilize without needing infrastructure. Historically, you'd pay normally on a per user basis, but where and agents are taking more and more control and you need less users, case of, well, how do you as a software company charge for these things? And we saw Salesforce flip-flop maybe summer of last year. Because it was around about when Heroku went down, where they issued pricing, and then about 2 weeks later they changed their mind on how they wanted to price and then shift it again. So the biggest CRM in the world can't work out their pricing model, then I don't know what chance of us that lesser mortals got. And on this, one of the things that seems to have driven the increase for Perplexity is they moved from they had a shift to usage-based pricing rather than sort of a subscription model. And on also the launch of Perplexity Computer, which is the thing that Simon Weil called about earlier, he's getting excited about, which is much more of the Perplexity's version of OpenClaw, right? So I think we'll see more and more people look to move to a different model of charging and maybe get similar figures to what Perplexity are doing.
Yeah, so interestingly, this week as well, HubSpot have also changed their pricing model. So they've gone towards trying to charge per success. So they're basically saying, right, that has turned into, so that communication has turned into a lead. And then that lead has come back to you. So therefore, we're going to charge you for that lead. And then you get into this like world of complexity where it's like, well, is that really a lead, or is that just a contact? And actually, is that a lead from my core product, or is that a lead from my secondary product or tertiary product? And you just kind of end up with this. It's really difficult for SaaS right now, I think, to try and, the old per seat model. Actually, if I'm, instead of using 3 humans, I'm now using 5 AIs. is that how do I offset that as one of these SaaS deliverers? And yeah, so I think it's going to be very interesting to see how they all do it. As you say, very likely that HubSpot will turn around next week and actually go, "Do you know what, that was a dumb idea. Let's try again." But yeah, I think as you say, that the kind of the example set by Perplexity, I think, is going to be copied by many because, yeah, clearly it's working and it's what consumers are looking for. All right, that is our AI and tech news for this week. Let us dive into our tool of the week. All right, this is another very accessible one, Matt. It's in Chrome and it's all about AI prompting. So what have we got?
So Chrome and Google have launched just in the last day or so. In fact, it might have been yesterday, Google Skills in Chrome. To recap, skills were introduced by Anthropic, and the simplest way probably to explain skills is your best prompts saved as something that you can call on command. So I've, for example, got a personal shopper that understands my prompts and my requirements and my sizes and all that sort of thing.
Pity that AI.
Yes, exactly. You would absolutely love to see inside that skill, wouldn't you? To save me having to explain every time what I want Cowork to go off and do. Chrome has now added skills. I'm sorry, those skills having been introduced by Anthropic were then adopted by OpenAI and as an industry standard again, a bit like we saw with the model context protocol that they also sort of set up. Chrome has now adopted these, so when you're in your browser, you can very simply have those prompts that you've got or your skills as one-click to executable. So if you do want to just kick off a search for a new pair of jeans or whatever swimming goggles you might be into, you can have them there and ready to go. Mal, what is your go-to one-click prompt?
The one that I used to use all the time, this is so sad, was just when I was trying to work out whether the new models were any good or not, was I would always ask it, who is Mickey Stockwell? All right. Now, nobody apart from very dedicated Ipswich Town fans will know that Mickey Stockwell was on right back in the late 90s and actually through the 90s and early 2000s and was absolute club legend, journeyman pro, just awesome. My favourite Ipswich Town player of all time. There you go. So yeah, but it took until probably ChatGPT 03 before I actually understood who the hell Mickey Stockwell was, because it's just so random. So yeah, that was my general question, but that was why I always used to kind of go, right, let's ask it about Mickey Stockwell, see how much detail you get about it. But yes, that's kind of it. But yours is goggles, is it? Swimming goggles, that's your...
Well, I think better examples directly from Google is health and wellness. You can quickly calculate protein macro for any recipe, side-by-side specs when shopping on multiple tabs, and also scanning lengthy documents. So if you're on a given web page, you can use the Google skill to go off and pick them out. And these skills can be very in-depth, and the idea is you keep them in bite-sized chunks. But the fact that now one click from your Google Chrome, I think is a really worthwhile thing to go off and have a look from both a personal point of view and a work. The Grimsby Town player that you made me think of there was Dave Gilbert. So you can go off and check him going forward.
There's going to be a few Dave Gilberts out there, so let's see where you go. Listen, thanks so much, everybody, for listening. That's all we've got time for this week. We will be back again next week with even more property and AI news. Thanks for being there. Are you up to exciting things this weekend as ever?
Merseyside derby, Mal.
It's huge. We didn't even go into the Old Farm derby last weekend between Ipswich and Norwich, which Ipswich, completed the double over their fierce rivals. So it was a great day as it was last week and the weekend before. So yeah, good luck. And hope you enjoy it. As I say, we'll be back next week and we will see you in a few days' time. All the best.
Take care, everyone.